Buckle up. We're going where no man has ever journeyed into the mystery of the bride and the bridegroom and the gathering for the great wedding in the heavens. This is the escape of the bride, Decode 12, the gathering for the wedding. Welcome back, family. Tabernacle of the bridegroom. Let's do this. Okay, fam. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back. I'm still having some minor issues. We're going to see if we can work through those. I might have to take some breaks here and there. This one's not going to be short. You're going to need to strap in because this is going to be so exciting. You're going to blast out of your seat. These are the most important signs we've ever received. And I'm going to try to pack this into one video. It's not going to be a short mission because there's so much to present, and I have to do this in a specific order to make sure that it's understandable for even the beginners. If you're new to this channel, welcome. What we are doing here in this work is we are hunting for the signs of the escape of the bride. And we are taking a different perspective on the Mazzaroth, and we're looking specifically at the signs for the bridegroom and the bride and what that pertains to with that storyline. There's many other storylines that are going on in the heavens right now, but we have taken on the focus of just presenting the bride signs and the escape of the bride, and we're going to show you how there is a direct connection to the signs of the bride and the bridegroom and the great wedding in heaven. So, welcome back. Forgive me for the time that I've been gone. I had to essentially work through an illness and at the same time try to work as many hours as possible while taking care of my daughter that's now living with me, and it's been just impossible for me to do videos. I was not well enough, and I couldn't even make it. I tried multiple times, but I couldn't even make it through a couple minutes of a video without completely having a physical breakdown and hacking and snorting, and um, it was really bad. So I'm finally at a point where I'm probably at 90%, and I'm hoping to be able to do this. If I have to just uh, pause and hack it out, then I can do that. But before, it would just hit me without any warning, and it would just ruin any video I tried to make. So here we go. We are going to decode this great marriage in the heavens. As many of you know that have been following for a while, I've been doing this for a very long time, and what I've found in Coded in the Heavens is unmistakable. It is absolutely unbelievable and undeniable. I believe I have found what we look at in Scripture as the great wedding in the heavens. And this is what we would call the sign for the escape of the bride. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to decode these heavenly signs. We're going to watch the bride and the bridegroom transition through the four stages of this heavenly marriage. And this is the most important part of decoding this Maseroth is understanding these ancient marriage customs, because this is the story being presented to us in the heavens. When I first took on this work over 15 years ago, I had some problems understanding this part of the Maseroth because I come from a Western culture, and that Western culture confused my understanding of this marriage. And so once I began to do deep research on the ancient customs of the Israelites and the ancient Hebrews, I began to understand that what was being presented here in the heavens is based on this ancient cultural marriage custom. So what we're going to do is we're going to present this custom by looking at the heavens and looking at how each constellation fits part of this marriage custom. If you're new to the channel, it's best to follow along and then go do some Maseroth research on your own for each of these constellations. It's easy to do that kind of research by just inputting, let's just say, Virgo Maseroth into your search bar, or Libra Maseroth. Always include Maseroth, otherwise you're going to get a lot of astrological web pages, and that will just confuse you and lead you down the wrong rabbit hole. um, it's best to continue to input Maseroth with every search that you do so that you are getting what we would consider is the ancient depiction or the ancient storyline. Even within that search, you're going to have to do some delineation and some filtering. So if you're new and you haven't been watching my videos, then it's important to maybe take a step back and go to the beginning of the channel and watch some of the videos and begin to understand what it is that I'm presenting, because this goes back 5 years of me presenting on YouTube. I had an older channel called Kadash Culture, and this is where my work began online. I had been doing research for years before I ever began my own channel, and I was part of um, another channel from a long time ago with Mark Allison, and this is where my beginning began, is before the 2017 Revelation 12 sign. And I believe I began my research in 2015, and so I have over 10 years of Maseroth research. And then I also have over 20 years of research in ancient cultures and artifacts, archaeology. I've been researching the ancient Israelites and the ancient Hebrews and the ancient Egyptians, the Babylonians, um, it, that whole area. even going back to Zoroastrianism and the other religions of the people of the Levant. Um, so I have a deep, deep grasp of what all these cultures did with this original information. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how the Mazzaroth is depicting a very specific encoded message. These are what we would call star codes. And this has been shown to us in ancient archaeology all over the planet. I'm also going to be do some other breakdowns of some other archaeological finds, and I'm going to be able to show how using the Mazzaroth we can decipher or decode these ancient glyphs and ancient artifacts. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at a very specific order of signs. Today, we're going to be looking at the beginning of the story of the Mazzaroth and where it begins. First, we're looking at the constellation of Virgo, and this is where the story begins with the Mazzaroth, with the virgin or the maiden or the bride, because she has multiple um, storylines within her constellation. There are multiple understandings and depictions going on within each constellation. And in order for you to have a deeper grasp, you need to go and look at the three deacon constellations that are associated with each constellation. And that's important work for you to be able to do on your own. If you've been following this channel for a while, then you know I've included literally hundreds of studies that you can go and they have attachments with charts and deep information on all of this Mazzaroth uh, encoded history. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at this from a marriage perspective, and we're also going to be looking at this from a bride and a bridegroom's perspective. So that's the work that's been given to us here on this channel. And I believe what I have found, because of how long I've been doing this research, I believe I have found exactly what we are being led to in the heavens. And so we're going to show you that today. This is a heavenly decode of the signs that are in the heavens, and they are broadcasting a very specific message, and you have to be able to have all of the pieces in play to truly understand what's being shown to us. So let's get to this. We are looking at today. Actually, let's back this up. Here is today, the 20th, and we're looking at the moon and the sun in transition to the new moon of, I'm sorry, this goes back to October. And what we're looking at here in October is the beginning of the Mazzaroth year. And it's important to understand the calculations and how this connects to the signs that we are looking for the escape of the bride. So we know that the sun is as a bridegroom, and the moon aligning. Let's just watch this alignment here. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the sun, and we're going to watch what is considered the new moon here. So now the moon has essentially passed, because here on meridian the moon has not passed. This is at 1 a.m. On the 21st of October. The moon has not passed the sun in the house. Okay, we can see that here. And so you have to go to this point at 6 a.m. before we see the moon transition past. So we're here back on meridian with the sun and the moon is now past the sun. So this is now viable for a new year. So we're looking at the evening of 10/21 being our transition to the new year day of 10/22. And this is an adjustment from the years before. And we were waiting for what we would call the witness or the moon to show us our alignments. So we use the sun and the moon and the stars to make sure that we are on track with our understanding of the Mazzaroth year. So it begins here on the evening of 10/21, 10/22 being our first day of the Mazzaroth year. And we now have the sun and the moon, or the bride and the bridegroom, together at the house of Virgo, and we are past the Spica line. And this becomes very, very important when you are determining the Mazzaroth year, because the 180 degrees from this must line up with the beginning of the Aries constellation. There has to be a 180-degree flip, and you do not get that. Let's just quickly go back to the 9/21 new moon. We can see that here with the alignment of the sun and the moon on 9/21, making 9/22 would be the first day of that month, which on the Mazzaroth calendar would be the final or the 12th month. But the Jews had the new moon here on 9/23 because they're going by the sliver moon. And then you have what's called the new moon calendar, which is the alignment with the sun. And all these are conflicting based on what we would call a single source. So here's where the confusion comes in. If you're just following a moon calendar, then you're missing two other parts of the components of establishing a true calendar. Because in Enoch, we know that it was the sun and the moon and the stars, and they all had their own individual calculations or routes, and we can track each of those. And there was an establishment made that of the 364 days of a ancient year. And if you look at the number of days in the lunar calendar, it's 354 days. And if you look at the calculations of the sun calendar, then that is 365.25 days, we'll call it. And that is not aligned with what Enoch called a year, which is 364 days. The only way you will get that calculation is by using the sun and the moon and the stars. And so you have to have a deep understanding of all three, what we call star charting. And that is where you're using a very specific star, like Spica is the star we use. And we use Spica to determine our alignments, and we use the constellation of Virgo and Aries to back that up. And then the moon is our witness of these alignments. And so we have to go beyond Spica, and then we wait for the sun and the moon to align. And this alignment only happens on the Metonic cycle every 19 years. Otherwise, the alignment's going to be off. So we're looking at 1021. Now that the moon has passed the sun, we can see this as the new moon or the entrance into the new year. And this is very important when it comes to understanding the escape of the bride. We have to have a starting point, and that begins our storyline. And this is associated in scripture with a birth. This event, the escape of the bride, is associated with a birth, just as the story of the birth of Messiah. And so if you have read and understood the story of the wise men at the birth of Messiah, then you will understand how important these signs are for this birthing event, because this is the next story to be played out after the Revelation 12 sign. We now have the birth sign being played out, and now we have that birth sign of Jupiter in the womb of Virgo from the Revelation 12 sign in 2017. Now we have 8 years later, we're now looking at, remember, 7 is completion and 8 is new beginning. So we have a brand new beginning of this heavenly story because the Jupiter, the king, has been born, and we've gone through the 8 days. This is just code we're going to talk here. We've gone through this 8 days, and now we have an entire new story, and that's now transitioning to what we call the bride and the bridegroom, the story of the marriage now of the king. So I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back and we're going to now present this grand marriage sign in the heavens. Okay, so here we go. Let's start by presenting this first sign. This is the sun and the moon coming together. Again, sun equals bridegroom, moon equals bride. They're coming together in the Virgo constellation. And they're coming together by the star Spica, which means the harvest star. And we can see depicted in the artwork of Virgo, we have a wheat sheaf in her left hand that is surrounding Spica. And then in her opposite hand, let's go ahead and take 1 second because this is all important information. And if you have done your homework, then you'll realize that there's some very important signs that are going on right here with this uh, line, this meridian line, this green meridian line. Let's go ahead and let's back this away. Um, I believe it's actually, it's right. It's right here, but we're gonna have to go back to this point here. Okay, so if you understand something about this stellarium artwork and the depictions of the lines that are associated with these constellations, you have to first realize that none of these borders are exact. Um, and in some cases, they just do not align with the storyline that is playing out. And so it's important to understand that first, that these borders of these constellations are not necessarily exact. And then number two, um, the ancients were using very specific stars and their alignments with the stars. So if you look at the meridian aligned with the sun, you can see how that is going directly through the right hand of Virgo, and in this other hand, she has another sheaf. And so, what we're being presented is that there are essentially two different harvest events. There are two different harvests. And we can go and we can see within the customs of the Hebrews, the ancient Israelites, that they had multiple different harvest events and that they encoded those harvest events into their calendrical system. And their holy days were associated with um, these understandings of this harvest cycle. And so this is going to become important when it comes to the escape of the bride, which essentially is a harvest. And it is going to become apparent within all of this language that I'm having to use so that you can understand that this is a birthing, it's a harvest, and it's a marriage all in one. And we can see that within the stories of the marriage of Cana. We can see this encoded in multiple biblical stories. So this is a prophetic distribution of information that is coming down to us through a book, but there is, in my opinion, every story within the Bible can be looked at in the heavens. There's not one story that's in the Bible that I can't find in the heavens. And I believe everything has been reversed. I believe that all the stories of the Bible have been encoded into written word, but it originated here in the heavens. And so we're going to reverse that, and we're going to be looking at how these constellations and the sun and the moon and all of these planets are telling us a story about the marriage. So we're going to see that live. We're going to witness this grand heavenly marriage. This is undeniable. I've been looking for these signs for years, family. 10 years on Stellarium, actually more on Stellarium, but I didn't actually have Stellarium on my own computer until 10 years ago. And from that point, I began to do deep, deep research into the Mazzaroth. And now we're at a point where I can decode the Mazzaroth in probably 5 different ways with 5 completely different storylines. But I was given the work of decoding the heavenly bride signs. And so this is what I've been focused on with this um, Kadesh culture and Tabernacle of the Bridegroom channels. I've been focused on the escape of the bride. And I believe that it is encoded in the heavens. I've literally found hundreds of encoded messages that are also associated with this breakdown within the gematria decodes with the names of these asteroids and comets. And so if you've been following that for a while in the community posts, then you know that uh, this cannot be chance because it's screaming to us also in the codes. So what we're looking at here is the coming of the bride, which is the moon, and she's passing the star Spica. She's making her alignment with the bridegroom. And now we have the new month, and this here on 1021 with this alignment here on meridian with the moon now past is now we can consider this the new year. But because we're in the middle of a day, we wait for that next evening, and now we can make the 22nd the New Year day, but we know that the day begins at sunset. So on the 21st at sunset, we can calculate our new year. And we're looking at 2025 here, and we have Venus, and this is the morning star Venus. Whenever Venus is on the right side of the sun, it's a morning star, and it represents Christ or the Messiah. And then when Venus is on the left side of the sun, then it's the evening star, and it represents the bride. But right now we have Venus representing Christ, and Venus is now in transition through the womb of Virgo. And this is happening at the beginning of the year, and we're going to call this the beginning of our marriage signs because Venus is one of our most important planets to watch for this marriage event. And we're going to show you how all that plays out with the planet Jupiter also, which is the king planet. So we have multiple representatives that are playing like a play. It's just like a play happening in heaven. We're looking at Venus when it transitions from the morning to the evening star, telling us a different story. So right now we have Venus as the morning star. It's representing Christ. Christ is entering into the womb. And again, this is a sign of birth. And we have the sun and the moon together, which is a sign of the marriage, the coupling. And we're seeing this sign right after Spica, so we are seeing a birthing line. The Spica line is a birthing line. The Spica star is a harvest star. This all equates to a birth and a harvest, and we are looking at the marriage sign right there with the bride and the bridegroom. So now we're going to look at the other associated signs. We're looking at Libra as the altar for the marriage. This is the altar where the vows are made. This is the first part of a three-part ancient Hebrew marriage. The first part starts with these vows made by the bride and the bridegroom, but it involves the father of the bridegroom because he has to make a payment to the father of the bride or the family of the bride. It's important to differentiate that. The payment from the father of the groom pays a payment to the family of the bride because in the ancient times, every member of a household was very important and had a very specific value. And if that person was taken out of the family, then they had a difficulty in replacing the duties of that other family member. So there was a value there in the ancient culture. And so a father of a groom understood that if his son was going to have a bride, then he would have to pay the price because his son was too young and immature to be able to take on that responsibility. It was the responsibility of the father and the groom's family to come up with that price for the bride. And we can see here that Mars and Mercury are standing upon the altar where this vows are made. And we can see that the sun and the moon are beginning their journey essentially at the birthing line. And we have Venus in transit into the womb. And if we look over into Ophiuchus, we can see that Vesta, the virgins, are in the house of Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus is what we would call the marriage chamber. So let's take a look at this next sign after the altar. And if we look at Ophiuchus here in this position, and we look at the body of Ophiuchus, it looks exactly like an ancient Hebrew or Israelite huppah. And the ancient huppah was the second part of the Hebrew or ancient Israelite wedding. So the first part was at the altar where the vows are made by the bride and the bridegroom. The next part of the marriage is where the bride and the bridegroom come together before all of uh, the people that are coming to the wedding. And this is where the bride and bridegroom are presented as husband and wife. And then from that point, they travel down this road, which is the line coming down the right leg of Ophiuchus, and this goes into what's called the Golden Gate. And the bride and the bridegroom were to walk down through this gate, and then they were to enter into the Father's house. And remember, this marriage is happening in the Father's house. All of the heavens are the Father's. And so what we're looking at is an event that's transpiring in the heavens. So we have Vesta, the virgins, inside of the house of Ophiuchus. And this can be considered, the entire constellation of Ophiuchus can be considered the marriage pupa. And we can see the legs of Ophiuchus coming down into the lower section of Ophiuchus. And this area between the legs of Ophiuchus has always been considered what we call the tent of safety, or an extension of the marriage chuppah. And this line coming down with his right leg, goes into the Golden Gate, and essentially it connects to the constellation of Sagittarius. And both of these constellations are straddling what we call the Golden Gate. And this is the gate that the bride and the bridegroom transfer through to enter into the Father's house. And we can see that in the constellation of Sagittarius. If we go back here and we move, so the tabernacle is easily distinguishable. We can see here within the constellation of Sagittarius, we have a pyramidal structure, and the pyramid looks like the top of the tent, and then you have the bottom of the tent, and then you have the walls of the tent, and then you have the posts of the tent. And this is the Father's house. You can also look at this as a three-mast ship, and you can also, we'll just do this quickly. You can turn it sideways, and if you look at it in that perspective, the bow of Sagittarius is also a boat. And these are all different stories within the story of the constellation of Sagittarius. This entire constellation is considered the house of the Father. And again, this is where the marriage final takes place. This is the third part of the marriage, because the participants of the marriage, they are invited at the point of the huppah, but the bride and the bridegroom had already done their vows in the constellation Libra. So let's go quickly. We're going to show you the signs that I had found for this in 2023. And let's go ahead and move this forward. And what I want you to look at here is the this is the marriage here. This is the bride and the bridegroom at the altar with the judge of the marriage. This is the asteroid Ceres. And you'll notice if you do your research on Ceres, it's one Ceres. This is a dwarf planet, the largest asteroid that has ever been discovered. And this, in our ancient tales, comes encoded as a judge. And this is needed for a marriage to be witnessed by a legal judge. And so we have the bride and the bridegroom and the witness Mars, and we have the judge Ceres, and we have another sign within the constellation of Libra. We have the comet Enki, and we won't even go into that because it's so deep. It leads down such a uh, it's like opening up a whole nother story. And so we don't want to get confused in this mission. This is the escape of the bride. What we're showing you is included in 2023, 1113, of 2023, we have encoded in the altar the marriage vows. And within this sign, we're going to go ahead and move to 2025, and we're going to go to here. We have the moon now in transition into the altar. Forgive me, fam. Now we have the moon at the altar, and now she's aligning with the sun. And this is happening today. And we have multiple signs that we're going to look at for this next segment. So we have the beginning happening right after Spica. This is the beginning of the journey or the signs for this great wedding. Now we have the sun and the moon, or the bride and the bridegroom, and we have Mercury, the messenger, and we have Venus now, a representation of Christ at the altar with Comet 210P Christensen, and we see Mars and Comet Lemon inside of the hoopah. So this is our next phase in the story. We have another code that comes to us within the scripture, and it is about that the sun does not know the time of this marriage. That in the ancient cultures, it was the father of the bridegroom that was ultimately responsible to make sure that his son, the bridegroom, was going to be prepared for his new bride to come into the father's house. And typically, what would happen is a father would prepare either a place within his own home for the bride and the bridegroom, or they would on in the property or just outside of the property. Sometimes the family would go find more land that it's directly associated with the father's property, and they would purchase that land for the new husband and wife. And then they would take 1 to 2 years to prepare the house that was going to be for the new bride and bridegroom. And it's important for me to get to all this, and it's going to take time to break all this down. So, this new bride and bridegroom, when they came uh, out of the father's house and they were finished with the ceremonies, they would be able to enter into either their own place within the father's house or their own new house, either on the father's land, or like I said, they would purchase new land that was really close to the family. They always wanted to be close to the families, especially a new family. As if they were going to have children, then they would need to have an easy way to be supported. And so these were all these ancient customs, and we can see that in directly in the Mazzaroth. So we see this bride in the constellation of Libra. She's the maiden. She's at the altar. Then we have the chuppah of Ophiuchus, where this customary marriage is going to take place in front of the people. They travel through this line, entering into the Golden Gate, and then they enter into the house of the Father, and then they have the great wedding banquet that happens in the house of the Father. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to watch these transitions happen. So, we're here with the sun and the moon at the altar, but now we have to go to this next sign, which is an entire month later. We're going to see the sun and the moon align here on meridian. We can see how the moon is now transitioning on the 19th, and the sun has gone through the chuppah. It's now in the middle of the gate, and we have the moon coming into alignment again. So we see the moon now entering into the ark or the ship or the boat. It's also we can go even back on the 19th and we can see, let's get in close. We can see right here, the moon is aligned with the tabernacle. And this is, if you're looking at this line coming from Sabik, we have the moon and Venus and the sun are all in what we call the Golden Gate. And this is a direct sign of the next transition of the marriage phase, because we have from the altar into the chuppah, and then the sun and the moon exit the chuppah. They enter into the Golden Gate. And then we have the next transition, and let's just watch the sun transition through the Mazzaroth. And let's watch all the planets. And now what we're looking at is, let's back it up to here. Now the sun is entering directly into the tabernacle, which is the Father's house. And it enters into the tabernacle. Now Venus enters into the tabernacle. Now Mercury enters into the tabernacle. We have Vesta that is waiting. You can see the location of Vesta. Now we're going to go into the Sagittarius constellation. And let's go ahead and line it up into a position where we're straight up. So we can see now on January the 5th, Mercury, the last final participant, the messenger, has entered into the tabernacle and is in transition to the great wedding banquet. And remember, they have to enter into the Father's house and go to the wedding banquet. Now, Vesta, the virgins are there waiting. And we have the sun. Let's go ahead and look at this up close. We have in the house of the Father, we have the bridegroom. And again, Venus is still a morning star representing Christ, the bridegroom. And we have Mars, and this is the a representative of the witness. Again, who was the witness in 2023 at the altar? Mars. So, what we're looking at here is the bridegroom, Christ, and the witness with the messenger entering into the tabernacle, and the virgins are waiting. And we have this wait. And I believe if we even go back, I believe that this sign here, this could possibly be our tribulation trigger sign, because this is happening right before the wedding or the escape. Now let's watch this transition. We're watching all of the participants of the wedding gathering together. Again, family, I've never seen this. I've never witnessed this kind of gathering in the stars in this constellation. Having seen all of the signs for years, I've never seen this like this. So I want to present this correctly. We have Mercury in transition, and then on the 5th, Mercury enters into the tabernacle. And we know that Mercury is the final planet that if we look throughout the Mazzaroth, there's nothing else going on besides Jupiter, Uranus, and Saturn and Neptune. And these are all outer planets. And we'll be discussing Jupiter at the very end of the video. But we're waiting on the moon only. Everyone, all of the other planets that are necessary for the the great wedding are in place now, with this Mercury entering into the tabernacle on January the 5th. Mercury enters into the tabernacle, so we can even get that down to the timing, and we're looking at about 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. We have the entrance of Mercury into the tabernacle. We also have Comet Weirshode, and this is also the reason I am looking at the 2nd into the 3rd for the possible beginning of the actual start or the trigger sign of the tribulation. And so what we're looking at here is possibly the sign, with Weir shows aligning with the tabernacle and also the white horse rider and Mercury. Let's take a look at this really quick. This is a lot of stuff to bite on, but it has to be shown this way. Mercury is entering into the Lagoon Nebula. We just were talking about Vesta entering into this same hourglass region. And this, I believe, is a trigger. We saw the virgins come through here. And now we're looking at the messenger transiting through the hourglass. And so we see Mercury exiting on the 2nd, and we have multiple other participants that we're looking at here that are very important. I don't have time to go into all the codes, but if you are familiar with the codes of Dembowska, it's very, very important. And then this is probably one of the most important signs besides Vesta, the virgins, is Metis, the wedding. This is the asteroid that represents the wedding. So if we watch this transition here, we look at Metis on the 24th. Metis crosses the line here on the 24th. Oh man, I can't even see the line. It's washed out. Forgive me here, fam. We can see it here. So we're looking at the uh the the Christmas Eve Metis, the wedding transits into the tabernacle. And this is happening right before the sun and Venus come into the tabernacle because the sun always enters on the 26th. Let's look at the sun. The sun enters on the 26th, and we can see that here. Here is the sun in the morning of the 26th, entering into the tabernacle. This is 12:26. The bridegroom enters into the father's house, and then we can watch how everybody begins to gather. And now Mercury enters into, this is the messenger entering into the house of the father. And now we have the final, most important part of the sign is we have the bride entering into the father's house. And this is what we were waiting for, is all of the people for the wedding are there in the house of the father for the great wedding feast. And then the bride comes into the picture, and the bride enters into the tabernacle, and then she transits through the house of the father into the place where the great wedding is taking place. And so we have all of the participants of the great wedding in the house of the Father. We have Venus as the evening star now, and now it is right next to Vesta. So we have the bride and the virgins in the house of Capricorn. And this is the fifth sign in the wedding. Now, remember, we were talking about how the father, we can just look at that as the constellation of Sagittarius. The father had built a house. Now we know we're talking about the king. So the king is going to make sure that he builds a rightful home for his son, who is the king, to come. So, what more of a rightful home for the king than a pyramid? So, in the backyard of the father's house, we have the constellation of Capricorn, which is our next house after the father's house. And it's connected to the father's house. And we literally have two pyramids in the constellation of Capricorn. And we know that Capricorn is a representation of Christ. The first part, or the first temple, or the first pyramid, is the temple of sacrifice. This is a representation of the sacrifice of Christ. The next temple, or the smaller pyramid, is the pyramid of resurrection. This is the resurrection of Christ. It's also the resurrection of the dead. It also has to do with the called out ones and the temple of resurrection. And so we're talking about, now we're looking at the moon and the sun and Mars and Mercury, all in transition from the father's house into what we would consider the son's house. And so we're looking at, now on the 19th, we have the moon, or the bride, is now in. Let's just back it up. Let's watch this transition. So on the 18th, we have the moon moving into the temple. It's actually the beginning of the 19th, and then we see this transition through the house of sacrifice into the temple of resurrection. And now we have all of the participants of the wedding. They are now transitioning into the son's house. And we can see how they have all transitioned except for Mars, who we can look at as the witness and also the warrior. And this warrior is outside of the gate guarding the son's house for this period. And if we take a step back and we look at this transition here on the 12th going into the 13th, we have a very important sign with weird shows again aligning with the white horse rider. And this is the beginning of Maseroth Hanukkah. The 13th is day one. And we have every single component of the marriage in the Father's house, the great wedding sign for Maseroth Hanukkah. Now, I know there's others. I know Steve Fletcher is tracking the Jewish Hanukkah, but I did not see the signs that I was looking for during the Jewish Hanukkah. Let's go ahead and back that up. I believe he's looking at 12:19. And I do see Venus coming out of the hoopah, but Mercury, the messenger, is just coming into the hoopah, and the sun is has not entered into the gate. I do see that the moon is in transition, and then on the 20th, let's go ahead and lock this in. I do see that the moon is in transition into the gate and into the tabernacle here on 12:19. And this can be seen as the beginning of the signs the of all of the guests exiting the hoopah or the wedding. Remember, there's three parts of a wedding in the ancient custom. In our Western model, there's only two parts, and so this gets confusing. But if we look at the ancient customs, there's three parts. There's the vows at the altar, there is the fupa marriage custom, and which is the second part. It's where all of the people get their opportunity to see uh, the bride and the bridegroom together. And then the third part is the actual customary gathering of everybody together for a meal. And this is the great wedding banquet. And that typically happens in the Father's house. And we do not see the sun and the moon. Let's go ahead and look at the constellation of Sagittarius. We don't see them entering into until the end of the day. This is at on 12:19. At the very end of the day, we see the sun and the moon transitioning into the Father's house. But we don't see Venus in the house or Mercury in the house. And in order for us to have the wedding or the banquet, we have to have all of the participants of that said wedding. So let's just go ahead and watch the days march through. So we have the 21st, Venus enters into the house, and then we have to wait until the 30th for Mercury to enter into the house. But from my perspective, they have to enter into the tabernacle and transition through the tabernacle. It's like a ritual that's going on, a blessing, a ritual of this wedding and the Father's house. I believe everybody has to transition. So we have on the 5th of January, we have Mercury finally entering into the tabernacle, and then on the 9th, transitioning into the 10th, then we have Mercury exiting the actual tabernacle and entering into what we consider another part of the Father's house where the wedding banquet is going to take place. remember, they are all going to come together. So if we watch this transition, then we can see here on the 17th, we see everybody gathered to, it's actually transitions on the here on the 16th. We can really see how, let's go ahead and center on the sun. Let's see how this all transitions. We're going to go here. We can see how it's beginning here, and then everybody gathers together here, and here the moon enters. And so we can't have uh, the the banquet without the bride and the virgins. And we have Venus as the evening star now, representing again the bride. And we have Mars as the witness and Mercury as the messenger. So we are witnessing the message in the heavens of the bride and the bridegroom and the virgins. And this story is being presented to us in a very, very tight order that I've never witnessed any time in my life. And this is the sign I've been waiting for. And this is our wedding banquet sign. And again, it's right outside of the new house of the bride and the bridegroom. And that's being presented to us with Venus and Vesta, the bride and the virgins together inside of the bridegroom's new home. And this is again happening directly during Hanukkah, Maseroth Hanukkah. We're going to go back to the beginning again. Here's the beginning of Maseroth Hanukkah. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. We have on day 7, the bride enters into the temple of sacrifice, which we know is Yeshua. So I'm already at an hour and 22 minutes. Let's go ahead and we're going to come back because I'm starting to get. Give me 1 second, family. Okay, sorry, fam. I am getting extremely congested, and I've been out this for almost an hour and a half. And I think we're going to go ahead and cut it here. We're going to come back and we're going to discover the rest of the signs with Jupiter. And I'm going to show you the patterns of the king. And I'm going to show you the patterns of Venus that are both highly associated with this wedding. I wanted to just bring forth this pattern of the wedding gathering, and this is the gathering of all of these inner planets, including Vesta. Oh, I'm glad I didn't finish up yet. Okay, we have a couple other very important guests. and I'm really glad I did not miss this. So we have right here with the rest of our guests, of course, asteroid Esther. And again, we're going to go back to the 13th, and I want to show you this asteroid Esther alignment. Um, you just, none of this can be made up. This doesn't happen this way. Okay, so we have Esther on the 12th, middle of the day. Actually, it's happening on the 11th, is the direct alignment. And this is a sign of the menorah. And if you haven't seen in my community posts the menorah code that I broke, um, that's important because it is tied to the January 11th sign in 2024. And what we're witnessing here is Esther in the house of the Father for Hanukkah. This is the beginning of, let's go to the beginning on the 12th. Here we go. So what we're looking at here, fam, is this is the beginning of Hanukkah on the Maseroth calendar. This is Esther, Mercury, Mars, the Sun, and Venus with Vesta, all under the wing of Sagittarius. This is the protected place of the Father's house, or the Father, the wing of the Father. And we have been associating our codes with the Maseroth Hanukkah for months now. And I've been directly focused on that time. Um, I believe that this encoded message has been coming to us for years now, with all of the videos done by multiple watchmen about the Hanukkah codes. And so I have been watching for this for years. I have had my eyes focused on Hanukkah for a very, very long time. And I just posted in the community, I believe it was either early this morning or last night or this morning, a very good video on Hanukkah and all of the hidden messages within the scriptures of Hanukkah. And we are witnessing right here before you this Hanukkah story outlined for us. And we can even, I believe that Juno is a representative of Vashti. Um, I don't know what's going on with. Let's pull this up really quick. Something's going on with my computer. Yeah, I'm having some issues, but we'll do that in the next video. Just, oh, there we go. It came up. I'm having some problems with my computer also. So we're going to have to get back and we're going to have to dig in a little deeper in Decode 13. We're going to have to bring more things to light. I've got to show you the codes that are within the planet Jupiter that are associated with this timing, because that's very important to bring forth. And then also, there is an encoded message with Venus that goes back years and years and years, and I have to bring that forward. Um, and then we have to understand that the Mazzaroth shows us things before the events transpire here on Earth. And that can sometimes be a day or it can be a week, and sometimes it's years. And so, what we have to be able to do is decode how quickly these events are expected to take place. And that's going to have to come in the next video. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and please post your comments in the comment section. Please keep them respectful. What we are witnessing here is encoded in the heavens, the gathering for the great wedding banquet. And again, these are all easy for us to see in the heavens. And if anybody can show me a time when this transpired in this way, I would love to see it. I've been looking for 20 years through all of these star codes, and I've never seen anything myself. So if you have a date and a time on Stellarium where this exact um, lineup happens, please let me know. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the only time I've ever witnessed these exact alignments in the heavens. And to me, if you look even deeper, like we're going to come back and look at the codes of weir shows, and that's association with the planet Jupiter. And we're also going to, again, we're going to talk about the patterns of Venus and how that has been leading us to this point. And so I want to thank everybody for coming. Um, Forgive me again for taking so long to get to this point. I've had just a lot of health issues, so your prayers are greatly appreciated. Much love, and thanks for being part of Tabernacle of the Bridegroom.